afternoon, good evening, wherever it is you are watching from, whether it's here on YouTube or listening to us. We want to welcome all of you to a very special beginning of what I am calling the Diamond Student Spotlight, but the name is definitely subject to change. We're going to be relying on our students, but we want to welcome you here to Diamond Oaks. We want to welcome you all to our first ever podcast here at Diamond Oaks Career Campuses. And I don't know about you, Coach Lisa. I am absolutely thrilled. I'm very excited. I'm just happy that you get to be my co-host in all of this.
Same. Right back to you. Yeah, this is going to be fun. I really like that you came up with this idea to spotlight and highlight what's going on here at Diamond. As I was getting ready for this episode, I was thinking I went to high school back in the 80s when you had your college prep kids and you had your kids that were going into the military, and then you had the kids that couldn't handle college, so they went to the vocational school. And it is so dramatically different now from back in those days. And the opportunities that students have is just amazing. So being able to bring them to the forefront, kudos. This is going to be so much fun.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And I know that for me, so to give ourselves a little bit more of an introduction on ourselves, because this podcast is not just about the two of us. You're not going to get to see, two adults who just talk about what we got going on here. This is not about us. We are more just the moderators of this discussion, of this podcast. We're just here as two educators who really want to get the stories out of our students because they made a choice to come here, come to vocational. And to make that choice requires, a lot of decision making. It requires a lot of effort. And dare I say it, it requires a lot of chutzpah to leave their home school and come here to Diamond. And the amount of stories we get told about their decision to come here, their excitement to come here, and then 2 years later, when they graduate from high school, they get to see, you know, where they have come, not just as from an educational perspective, but also from a maturity standpoint. As you
Mhm.
said, some of these students here, they have no intention of going to college, and that's completely fine. I think
Yes,
that in their old setting, maybe that was the expectation, but when you don't fit that expectation, what happens as a result? So, in essence, we're covering those who want to go to college, those who want to go out in the workforce, those who may still have no idea what they want to do. And that's our job to be able to highlight them and show them that there is a solution to every problem. Might take us a while to get there, but
right.
but it works out well. So,
Yeah,
but
so that whole kind of topic kind of hits home. About a week ago, a week before this podcast, I was listening to another podcast
mhm,
where our HR director, Kevin Apt, was the guest.
yeah,
And he spoke of the three E's, which is exactly what you alluded to. When you leave Diamond Oaks, are you going to enroll in
mhm,
college or trade school or whatever? Are you going to enlist and go into the
mhm,
military? Or are you going to be employed? And any three of those tracks is absolutely wonderful. And the
yeah,
fact, like you said, that we get to help these students, we get to follow their journey, be a part of their journey in figuring out what they want to do, I think is amazing.
yeah.
So I do want to throw it back to you. You alluded to we were going to introduce a little bit about ourselves. Why don't you get us
Yeah.
started?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. We've been doing this for what, like 5 minutes now? I haven't even introduced myself.
Right?
So for
That's a
those,
shocker.
I know, right? I go this long and I never even talk about myself. I sound very narcissistic saying that. So for those who are going to be watching this, we are your two moderators. So my name is Rob Horton. I am a fifth year educator here at Diamond Oaks. This is my third year here at Great Oaks, all three of which have been here at Diamond. My previous 2 years, my first 2 years in education, I actually went back to my old high school alma mater, which was Fairfield High School. So I've been a Cincinnati kid through and through. When I graduated from Miami University, it took me a little bit to find a teaching job, but I ended up finding it over at Fairfield, and it was a lovely come back to home situation, kind of get a little more acclimated to what education is all about, and kind of learn the ins and outs, even though I was also working with some of my former teachers. Definitely was a unique experience, but I have nothing but good things to say about that school and that department, my social studies department over there. And I've been a coach for Fairfield for almost 5 years now, coaching in the bowling realm. So for anyone who wants to talk about sports, I'm your guy. It's been a lot of fun, but the last 3 years have been here at Diamond, and it's been an absolute blessing. It's been an absolute honor, getting to learn education from a vocational standpoint. You were talking earlier about how vocational has always been a defining moment for some students, and I remember my high school days in the 2000s, and I was a book smart kid. The idea of vocational never really I never understood it. It was very interesting, but I never really had the understanding of, well, I'm never going to use my hands for cars, or I'm never going to prick someone and take their blood in a health tech realm. You know, to me, that never made sense. And when I was in high school, I'll admit I was one of those kids that was just like, oh, well, why would anyone ever choose to do that? And then to come to vocational as an educator, a decade later, a decade longer later, it's just I wish I could go back and tell my 15-year-old, 16-year-old self and say, man, you
Mhm.
were such a jerk. I really do. I wish I could say you were such a jerk because I had friends who went to vocational, whether it was Great Oaks or another vocational, and they had such a phenomenal time. And now I go to them whenever I have any sort of issue, whether it be cars, whether it be plumbing, whether it would be
Mhm.
roofing. The amount of students that I've come across now as an adult who I'm now friends with who all went to vocational, I'm thinking, okay, you're lucky. I wish I had understood it better back then. So that's one of the true things that I really want to push as we begin this new podcast is that even if you're unsure, come to vocational, get a sense of what it is. Take some time and experience it because you might learn a special skill that you never knew you had. And that's been my mindset ever since I came to Diamond Oaks a couple of years ago. And I'm one of the academic teachers at Diamond. I'm not in the lab setting. I only get a chance to go there every so often. So it's really exciting to kind of hear their stories as they come into class and say, well, this is what happened in lab today. And you're like, man, I like it. So, but it's been a real great blessing. And I really want to highlight these students. And that's what the goal of this is. But I know I've got only a few years of educational experience, but it's been a really good time. And that's my story, at least where we are at the moment. So, Coach Lisa, I know that you've been in education longer than I have been,
Just a little.
but just a little, but you get to see these kids just as much as I do. Why don't you tell us about your backstory and
Yeah.
where you've been around?
So my backstory is I was the college prep kid at my high school. It was a very small rural school, and at that time we still had shop classes at the school. We had FFA at the school. We still also had a vocational school for those who wanted to dive deeper. But I even remember in my senior year of high school where I was ready to go off to Miami University to become a French teacher. And I enrolled in FFA instead of calculus or trig or whatever the higher level math was. And my guidance counselor got so upset with me. And he goes, you need this higher level math to go to college. And I'm like, no, I don't. I am not going to use trig or calculus to teach French. What I do need to be able to teach is public speaking. And so I was part of the public speaking. We did debates. We did, oh, what was it called? Where you parley pro, parliamentary procedure, did all those things that helped me greatly in being able to talk in front of a class, to my colleagues, presentations, whatever. So then I went to college, became a French teacher, have been fortunate to travel around the world. Those of you who know me know that I just experienced my last free trip to France because my French colleague retired finally. But I was a French teacher basically for about 20 years. I also did about 8 years in infotech. And when I left the classroom, I became an instructional coach. So a lot of people are going, what is an instructional coach? Basically, I work with teachers and students to better use technology in the classroom. And sometimes it's we don't use technology. There's some other plan that works even better. Um, I have kind of an added benefit in that my dad was an electrician. He taught us not only electrical, but just basic hands-on. He was also he was a mechanic for several years as well. So I have always seen the value in knowing these hands-on skills, but it never really clicked for me how deeply those skills are explored here at the Career Tech, which is now called Career Tech, right? It's no longer called vocational. We've done a little shift called Career Tech. And so I've been now a coach for 6 years, and this is my third year in the Oaks, my second just at Diamond. So the segue that I would like to make at this point is for those of you who grew up, especially during my time, when there was that separation, there was that stigma, these kids are actually getting career credentials to go into the fields that they're studying. And I find that absolutely amazing. So whether you're going into cosmetology, where you have the opportunity to take the state board exam and become an actual cosmetologist, we've got others that are getting electrical certifications, auto certifications, um, physical therapy aides, health tech you mentioned earlier, where they can go into nursing or working at nursing homes. There's just such a wide variety of opportunities, and the depth to which they can explore and learn and really hone their craft is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, it's ironic. So I didn't get a chance to tell you this earlier. So this past Friday, all our students were not here due to
Mhm.
professional development this past Friday, and we were, getting our last statements out, getting ready for this. I had a wedding to go to Friday evening,
Yes.
and
How'd that go?
it went really well.
Good.
It was an old friend of ours who we haven't seen, but what I really love is that after the ceremony, those of you been to weddings, you go out and you enjoy the hour where you're talking to people and whatnot. One of our students who recently graduated here from Diamond last year was
Cool.
there at the wedding, which I did not expect. Was a former student of mine who was in exercise science.
Mhm.
So I had run into her and I was just like, hey, and gave her a hug and I said, how you doing? She's at University of Cincinnati. And I talked to her very quickly. I said, how are your intro classes and whatnot? And she gave the perfect freshman year answer, which is, I'm tired and I've got a lot of work to do, which I said, that's not a huge surprise. But to what you were just talking about before, credentialing, she had said that she's already classes ahead of all of the other students that are in her intro classes because of what she did in vocational the last two
Yes.
years, acquiring those main, CPR training was a big one,
Mhm.
or any sort of, credentialing that existed. She's got it. So all these
Nice.
students are having to take all these extra classes. Meanwhile, she used that as a prerequisite to where she
Mhm.
still is going to graduate in 4 years, but she's ahead of the curve, which again is perfect. And I was also talking to a man who was sitting right next to me at this wedding who actually loves to hire from people at Great Oaks. And he had specifically talked about a couple students from Diamond who were before our time, unfortunately,
Yeah.
but also some students from Live Oaks, which two very different locations, but
Yes.
all in the auto industry, which is great. And he was talking about how again, those students are just well prepared. And he said that, within 6 months, you can tell if a person who you recently hire is the real deal or if they're going to eventually, flounder a little bit. And he said that there have been very, 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 very few students that they have hired on in the last 20 years who they've hired from Great Oaks that have turned out to flounder. Almost every single student has flourished and has been successful and they've held on to
Amazing.
for a couple years before they move on to their next
Yeah.
adventure, whatever it's going to be. And I always go, man, that's awesome. It proves that what we're doing is working. And on a quick segue, I just want to say I'm glad that you and I came in on the same year because the amount of times that you have saved me on technological stuff has been ridiculous. So if anyone ever needs some help from Coach Lisa Oldegaz, I know who you should be contacting. It would be her. So, but
Oh, shoot.
but it works out perfectly. And I think that, kind of talks us because obviously for those of you who are watching us on our first podcast episode, this is all about building a foundation. This is all about getting an idea
Yes.
of what we are, who we are, and what to expect. And the best thing that we can really describe to you all is the fact that vocational is not just a perfect place to go to, especially if you're someone who's more of a hands-on learner, but we have a huge variety of offerings here at Diamond in terms of our lab settings. It doesn't have to be, the typical what everyone knows about, which is, construction and HVAC, electrical. You also have health tech, surgical technology, you have cosmetology, exercise science. We have IT Academy.
And we cannot forget the horse barn,
We can never forget
equine
Equine, the
and
horse
large
barn.
animal management.
Yes, which they always do a little, horse show at the end of the year,
Yes.
which they always invite all of the staff and even some other students to go down. I finally got a chance to go down last year, which was pretty cool. A lot of my
Yep.
students were in equine last year. The one that I love the most is culinary because they always like to have the seniors who always they make their own menus. That's part
Yes.
of their senior capstone is making their own menu and then getting their team together and producing a pretty solid lunch. I can't deny that. It's a pretty solid
No,
lunch.
it's amazing.
It's great. And that goes down to what Chef is doing down there and getting those students ready to go and
Hmm.
getting them prepared. Like you said, it's all about preparation. And
Yes.
these labs have done such a phenomenal job in preparing these students for the next stages in their life, whether, like you said, whether it's, enrolling in another school or whether it's getting employed at a job of their choice. And then they get to come to us, the academics, which is so much fun.
Yes. But that's another podcast.
That's another, yeah, that's another podcast that we'll get into later on. The other thing that we really wanted to emphasize here, because one thing that actually, Coach Lisa, you can kind of dive into a little bit more, is that you brought back a really special thing that our school brought up before, and that is called the Diamond Sparkle Awards. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes. So I can't take credit for bringing it back. It was actually initiated by our dean, Scott Cauliflower. He asked from the technical side, is there a way we can do this easily? So of course, we did it technologically. So we created a form that students and parents and teachers can all nominate either a student or a staff member for exhibiting the next ready skills. So one of the pillars of our education here are skills. And we've named them the Next Ready Skills. It's a district-wide initiative. But there are five basic pillars to that. So you have everything from effective communicator, adaptable navigator, skilled professional, help me out. I should
Skilled
have all five
professional,
memorized.
critical
Um,
thinking, accountable
Accountable
employees.
employee,
Those would be
yes,
the
and
other two,
critical
yeah.
thinking, yes. So as students or staff exhibit these skills, they can be nominated and they receive a certificate for Diamond Sparkle that says they've been nominated by whoever nominated them and the skill that they exhibited. So it's really cool. Staff members get recognized at our monthly staff meetings, and students are announced every Friday. And they get called down to the office to get their certificate and a little prize, which so far I've heard chocolate is one of the options.
Chocolate's been the
So
favorite
that's
so
always
far.
good, right? But it's a way to tie in what we're doing with recognition because it's not about grades. It's not about who's got the most jobs or the most placements. It's about just the everyday good things that people are doing here.
It's the everyday effort that we
Yes.
always look for. And I think so far in the
Yes.
first 2 weeks since we've reinitiated this, I think we've had 31 students already
I believe you are
in,
correct.
in, in just
Yes.
2 weeks. And again,
Yes.
31 in 2 weeks might not seem like a lot to some people. When you consider our overall population is about what, 800 students, I
Yep.
think.
About 800 for
And
both grades.
and we lose, a fair amount of them due to job placement after a couple weeks. So they're out in the workforce,
Hmm.
for 3, maybe 4 days in a week. So 30 students might not seem like a lot to some people, but to us, that's a lot because
Exactly.
it's those skills that we use to help evaluate, especially for those students who want to go out into the workforce early and use that as their work-based learning hours or use that as
Yes.
their opportunity to make some money while they are out in school, which is critical. So the fact that I think you guys brought back Diamond Sparkle, I think is awesome. And not
Yeah.
to gloat that, Miss Cindy, who's also in our cybrary, decided to nominate me for a Diamond Sparkle because I put paper in the printer. I am
Yes.
very appreciative of. I cannot I can't go against that. So
Yeah, but like you said, it's the little things, the little everyday efforts that make a difference.
mhm.
So,
And it makes our community better at the end of the day
yes,
too, which when
absolutely.
you reinforce positive behaviors, it gives them more of an inkling
Yes.
of unity
Hmm.
within the building, which helps. And hopefully this
Absolutely.
podcast kind of gets us into that as well, which I think kind of leads us into probably one of our last topics in our intro podcast episode today, and that is who's going to be on it, right? Who's going to be on
Hmm.
it. And like we said at the very beginning of the show, it's not about us. We're the moderators. The first couple episodes, it's going to be us and other staff, kind of explaining, their their pathway to get to vocational. But where this all comes from is that in October, which is coming up in just a few short weeks, our labs begin to nominate their students of the month. And those students are recognized for a lot of those soft skills, those next ready skills that we just emphasized, that you just emphasized, and they get a great lunch out of it. The lunch is pretty
Hmm.
good, can't argue that at all.
Well,
But we
and
all,
that's even done by our culinary department
and
too,
that's exactly that's done by a culinary
right?
department as well. But the other thing that we wanted to emphasize was that a lot of those students, they have their own individual stories. So to give a little more background, we have six major feeder schools here at Diamond, which is Oak Hills, Taylor, Harrison, Mount Healthy, Finneytown, and North College Hill. We have other schools that come in through a lottery system, but so it's not just specifically those six,
Mhm.
but those are where the majority of our schools come from. And getting to hear their stories from whether that be from different types of feeder schools, different types of labs, they're learning different things compared to everyone else, but they're also still learning those same essential skills. So this podcast, this student spotlight that I will still call it until the name changes, but um,
Yes, yes.
but it's all about them. And they have stories, they have things they want to talk about, they have exciting things going on in their life. We're just here to moderate, we're just here to enjoy the show because the more that we get from them, the more this podcast becomes.
Yes.
And that's something that we really want to highlight. So, yeah, you get to deal with us this entirety of episode 1, but it's nothing terrible. Do not worry. It's not just going to be us. We're going to keep growing and we're going to keep having fun with it. But our basic call to action is this, keep emphasizing those next ready skills, keep emphasizing those soft skills, get yourself student of the month. We want students here to recognize their brilliance and to recognize their stardom and what makes them them and have an enjoyable time with it. That's how I've always wanted to see it. And feel free to add on because I know that there's more to add on.
Well, there's one big piece that we haven't
Yeah.
mentioned yet is in addition to having students as guests on the pod, we also need students to get involved with the handling and the running of the pod. So maybe you are interested in editing video. Maybe you're interested in becoming a co-host. Maybe you're interested in coming up with topics that we might consider. Social media to help, get this out there. If there's anything that you can think of that might be an interesting thing to do with a podcast, please scan the QR code that you see on the screen now, and it will take you to a form to fill out that will come to us, and we'll reach out to you. We would like to get a team of students together to help lead this. We're going to need help with creating a name, right?
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, we got to have a crafty name. We got to have that hook, right? We are going to be posting on YouTube. So, if you've got those technical skills to help out with, design, just anything you can think of. And even if you think, oh, I don't know, I'm interested in, but I don't know, fill out the form. We can have a little chat and it may lead somewhere or it may not. But at least we've had the chat and you won't leave going, I wonder if, I wish I would have. Let's just give it a try and see what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we've already talked to a lot of our staff here at the building. They've been nothing but supportive about the project. And
Hmm.
one thing that we would also advocate for is those of you that are in our organizations that we offer here, whether it be National Technical Honor Society or our social media influencers, or just those of you that, just would like to find another club to do, another organization, you know, contact us. We are happy to supply, we are happy to help, we're happy to involve you in all of this. And hopefully it grows to become something that we can make as the podcast here, not just for Great Oaks, but just for vocational, for career tech. We just want to make this the best podcast that we can make it. And again, it all comes from the students, and the students we
Yes.
know are going to be just as influential, if not even more than us. So we're just two people. It requires a village. It requires a village, and I know that we can absolutely acquire that. So,
Yes.
but
All
yeah,
righty. Well, on
well.
that note, good first episode, Mr. Horton.
It's a
It's
heck
been
of
a
a first
pleasure.
episode, Coach Lisa. We've done a great job, I think. Maybe,
Yes,
who
we have.
knows? Now at the end of this episode, we now add a blooper reel. No, I'm kidding. Um, that's for later. That's for later. Well, but no, but thank you for making this become a reality. This has been a months-long project that we have been working with, and we have plenty of people to thank. We'll of course thank them as we have more episodes be released. But for now, we will leave it at that. Please contact us with anything that you need, anything that you want to know more about. And until we see you next time, I'm Mr. Rob Horton. We have Coach Lisa.
Yep.
Thank you
And
all.
be sure to like us
Yes,
and share us, right?
like us on
We got
YouTube.
to start the self-bragging already.
The self-bragging already, the whole
Yes.
narcissism,
We
right?
we got to get it out there, right? We're going to
Absolutely,
go
absolutely.
national one day.
Maybe, who knows? We'll end up on the
Yes.
Today Show.
I love it.
All right. Well, we will see you all in the next episode.